We have co-development relationships with a lot of parties, and we have other kinds of mechanisms that we're using to really improve our efficiency in terms of getting out there. And it really is trying to turn this business more into a flow business, more and more inbound marketing, and less knocking on the doors, because that takes a lot of time and manpower.
Right. And so when you think about the customer origination landscape, do you think about it more so from different regional dynamics that drive any distinctions between what's successful and what's not in acquiring a customer? Or is it more so focused on the type of customer? So is a school and government or nonprofit customer the same approach to originating a deal with them in California as it is in Massachusetts? Or is it more just about the actual region itself?
We start out with a regional perspective. So we have target markets that we focus on, and then within those target markets, we focus on which channels we're going to use the most, and what channels we're going to spend the most time and money on. And they generally are a combination. Sometimes we will look at a market and say, well, this municipal market, this RFP market is not mature enough, and we're not going to pursue that, or we're spending too much time on that without, we need local partners, because we know that every RFP that goes out of this state is going to want a local partner. And so these are the kinds of decisions that we're making all the time. And that's kind of how we go about things.
Sure.
So we really do believe it's all local, and we like to have a local presence wherever we are.
Right. And that's, a testament to what we see in the fact that the market from a demand perspective has remained very much fragmented. But I do wonder though, TJ, with the work you do in the Midwest, for example, how dependent are you on partnering with a local, let's say 2 guys with a pickup truck and a credit card to actually originate that opportunity and then step in? Or can you sort of cut out that initial middleman, quote unquote, between the customer and you?
Yeah, well, it can work both ways. I think we've had success working with 2 guys and a credit card, and we've also had some challenges at the same time.
So what do you mean in terms of challenges? What are the key challenges that you've come across with that?
In terms of developing a project, there's a lot of things to check off the list. Mm-hmm. And we've learned the hard way a few times that there's several checks that at the beginning of the process we overlooked. And so depending on the size of the project, the checklist can be larger or smaller. So we kind of like to control the process if we can. We like to work directly with the customers. We try to originate the projects if we can, but there's still opportunities that come up today, from roofing contractors. Roofers have pretty good relationships with building owners. We also we get a lot of leads from manufacturers as well. A few years ago we signed a partnership with GE, and we were building solar energy carports across the country with some of the GE customers. And we're still doing that, but that led to other opportunities where one of GE's customers came to them, and they knew that they were involved in solar. GE used to be a little bit more involved in solar, but they still dabble in it. Lead can come to GE, and GE calls us, and we've also had some opportunities come about with a competitor of theirs, Schneider Electric. We did a project last fall in Chicago at the Shedd Aquarium, right. And Schneider Electric managed the building envelope at the Shedd Aquarium for 15 years or so. And at the Shedd they wanted to do solar, and so we worked with Schneider on that. So we still work with those developers that were using the phrase 2 guys with a credit card. Yeah. But we like to control the process as much as we can. So therefore, we don't spend our time and spin our wheels on opportunities that may not end up being fruitful.
Right. And so taking all of that in perspective, so you have some of these inbound lead opportunities with the 2 guys in a pickup truck or whatever. Then you have ultimately have referrals as well. And I guess, have you done any work really trying to understand how much does it actually cost to originate a customer through some of these strategies? Or at this point, is it really just take what you can get and not really worry about the cost, which is something that on the residential side has become an increasingly important cost category to figure out ways to reduce?
Yeah, that's a good question. I guess the best answer I have is that we really haven't figured out what it costs to originate some of that business. At Innovatus, we've tried to go about it directly with customers. And there's another part of our business too. We also do distribution, and so we work with many different companies across the United States. A lot of them in the Midwest, and they can range from electrical contractors, roofing contractors, or smaller solar companies. So I don't actually know how much it costs us to do that, and
you can make up a number, they'll believe you anyway, right? No, it's fine. Well, I mean, then going back.
I had a good number to make up.
Well,
that's fine. But yeah, Laura, go for it.
And we have looked at it a lot, and we really look at kind of how much money we think it takes to get to LNTP, because that's the most risky part of the project. And then we look at some yield rate in terms of dead deals versus active deals, and we look at the manpower and the hours involved in getting to that LNTP number. We think at LNTP the risk falls off dramatically, so we have another set of between LNTP and NTP metrics that we look at as well. But that's how we evaluate them, and we evaluate those numbers per market.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, and also, sorry, before you jump in there, with respect to your partnership with the roofing company, that's a prime example of a relatively new strategy that you've adopted within the past 12 months. And I'm curious if you've done any work to evaluate how successful that strategy has been yet.
Yes, and we have partnerships, actually, a few partnerships that are similar to that. And the key to success in those partnerships, because those aren't acquisition agreements, those are co-development agreements. There has to be enough incentive for the people who are on the other side, who are not solar experts, to push a solar product and to bring you in on the solar project. So, the challenge is to find it, to find it interesting to them, in terms of compensation and understanding the product, to be able to do that when they go into your potential customer sites.
Great. Jesse, I didn't mean to cut you off. What were you going to say?
No, it was just that, thinking about cost, it's actually hard to a priori know what some of the opportunities will yield from a given developer or from a different given asset. We have found that opportunities that we thought would be tens of megawatts in multiple projects didn't even get past the first one. And then something where we know this one developer is selling a project to us and selling a project to a utility company and selling a project to a private equity fund, but then afterwards they turn around and say, okay, we'd like to do the rest of the pipeline with you guys. And so I think it's a lot about understanding 75% confidence, what is a good potential opportunity, and then like so much else in life, showing up.
Great.
Yeah, getting to work.
Great. All right, well, I want to leave at least a few minutes for any questions, if anyone has any. I know we have the cocktail reception coming up, so I'm sure many of you are eger to get over to that. But
Let's stick around here and talk.
Yeah, sure. I can talk about commercial solar all night, but it's fine. But if anyone has any questions? All right, well, I have a question, if not, just to finalize it. So one thing we did not cover was thinking about standardizing the role that a developer has in the project development process. So I think the word developer gets thrown around a lot and can have a lot of different meanings depending on when they come in, what access to capital they have, and so on. And from your perspective across the board, I'm curious, how important is it to standardize the role that you play in project development to achieve scale and really hone how you do what you do? Mm-hmm. Or is there this willingness to sort of take what you can get whenever the project, whatever stage the project is currently in?
Yeah. No, I mean, I think I think it would be a mistake for us and my team, or for most folks, to try to do everything. right? You can be you can be vertical and do some development and do some financing, but there's bounds on that, and mostly dictated, I think, by logic. For our own internal development team, obviously that's a soup to nuts. Get the land, get it, LNTP or NTP. When we're working with partners, sometimes it's less formal, but in the ideal situation, we've got an almost, choose your own adventure teaming partnership document that we go through, and it says, here are the 50 stages of development. And it's, again, getting back to the simplicity and transparency, it's very straightforward. And if everybody's not working off of the same checklist, then that's the first problem. But then it says, okay, who's going to do what in this relationship? Clearly define it, and then just go out and make business, make money. And so that's a perfect situation, and Corey, I'd be lying if I said that it was every time that we were working with a group it was that, but at least you kind of have to know where you're trying to go with the relationships and with the business thrust, so that if you're not 100% there, at least you're 50% there, you're 75% of the way there, and you've articulated what an ideal process is. And so I do think it's very important. Not that everybody can't do things equally well. There's probably many of things with our partners that we could either do, and it could be a coin flip, but it's just, let's just be very clear and defined about it so there's no confusion after the fact.
Great.
Yeah.
TJ.
Yeah, I would say we're trying to do some of the same things that Jesse mentioned, and we had this discussion a little earlier. It can be hard trying to standardize the process with certain customers. I mentioned that the top 25 companies that have installed solar. In 2013, the SEIA report that came out said that Walmart had installed 90 megawatts, and we were just trying to guess that there was no one set PPA, whatever, for all of those projects. There's probably 20, 25 different PPAs. Just because there's a lot of complexities to those projects. You've got different buildings, different entities underneath that corporation that owns the property, and it gets complicated. But I think trying to standardize, the internal process, from a company perspective on how you're going to go about it, but then be able to be flexible with the customers, I think that's sort of key.
Sure.
Yeah, I would agree with TJ. We standardize our processes. We have standardized documents that always start out when we hand them to our customers standard, and inevitably come back non-standard. And that's just something that the industry will have to accommodate, frankly, because if the goal of the industry is to put megawatts out there and have solar megawatt hours generating, we have to have a more flexible way of being able to accommodate minor deviations within a generally financeable and well-structured project.
Great.
I'm sorry, I have just one question. I'm over here. Over here. All right. Sorry, I don't mean to delay everybody's cocktail hour. I just I have a quick question because I feel like it's really overlooked. My name is Ramsey. I'm from a company called Solar RFP. My question is, because you guys work in the commercial space, there's a carbon emissions scheme or a carbon emissions reduction plan in California. And I don't know if you guys, if a lot of people know about this, but it's by the Air Resources Board in California. The Northeast also has a carbon emissions reduction plan as well. And I'm really curious why we haven't, in the solar industry, talked about this, because every single year, the Air Resources Board plans on lowering these caps, putting more pressure on commercial to go green, but it just seems to be overlooked in the solar space, and I'm just wondering why nobody's really touched up on it.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good point, and we often look at that because it's part of our, it's part of our marketing to our C&I customers, and what we see as one of the problems, even for companies that have a corporate goal of achieving some sustainability standards and have sustainability officers, solar doesn't rank very high in any of those point mechanisms. So it doesn't rank very high in LEED certification. There's some greeny certificates that, when sustainability officers are looking at solar, they would rather change their light bulbs out because they're going to get more points for that. So I think part of the answer might be working with these organizations that are certifying different energy programs and try to get solar a little bit higher up on the list so that these companies do have an incentive to go solar.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I also think some of the most recent EPA guidelines that got passed are really going to be helpful for the commercial sector as well.
Yeah, and I think it would very quickly filter into our sort of more active consciousness to the extent there was some price signal set on carbon, and we can talk about that until we're all blue in the face. But that's just a really easy way to get that integrated into our financing strategies, and then we can turn around that savings back to the clients and say, look, you're doing even better by your carbon reduction.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and one other point of clarification, Laura, you had mentioned that a lot of building managers, when they're thinking about the business case for doing a suite of different types of capital investments, solar can oftentimes rank below a lot of like energy efficiency investments. And one thing that we are beginning to see with some commercial developers is pairing solar with either demand response or with energy efficiency or some other service offering. And I'm curious, to what extent are you considering being able to branch out beyond solar and ultimately provide another service offering beyond just solar for commercial customers?
We are looking at that, and I think it's been talked about a lot today and a little bit yesterday in terms of the price signals that customers would get in terms of their incentive. They have to have an incentive to have storage and to shift load a little bit. And until that happens, I think they think it's they're never going to get off the grid, and batteries are still quite expensive. So it's the energy efficiency is still a very attractive offer for them.
Great. Any other questions? All right, well, we'll let you guys get to it. Thanks for being patient, and let's give our panelists a round of applause.